Okay, we're off and running. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to walk through Galvanize Secrets together. I do, in this case, want you all to code along with me, so we'll go a little slower, and I'll try and make sure that we have some checkpoints to make sure we're all on the same page and that we're all getting functioning code going. So here's the app right now. I have some usernames and passwords just saved with a Chrome extension, so you can ignore that, but actually, yeah, let's bring those back. So right now, the app doesn't work. Like, if I try to log in, it doesn't really do anything. If I try and sign up, it's not going to work either. Actually, I don't even need to type this out. It's not going to work. I did have it functioning, but I've commented out my code. I've tried to sort of reset it back to where the initial state of the project was. So let's kind of take a look, because I know there was code written already. So this is the repo without anything having been, whoa, that's too big. Anything having been touched on it. So we will use the README to kind of check off the tasks as we go, make sure we're doing things in the right order and we're getting them done. But I also want to kind of point out the files that we're going to be working with mostly in this first part, where we're just doing authentication. So in terms of routes, we're mostly going to be touching two files. We're going to be touching the routes file, this auth.js route file. Right now, there's not much at all in there. It's just a post to /login, which of course will be for logging into the application, and a post to /signup. Right now, there's no functional code in here. All that happens is a message. When you hit the route, all that happens is a message is sent that says you were successful. So no real functionality. If we go back out to the root, the other file that we're probably going to be working with a good deal this afternoon is the app.js file in public scripts. So those are kind of be our main focus. This one does have some more code in it right now. It essentially has kind of like a document.ready function up here. This syntax is the same as document.ready, so don't be confused by that. And it's just kind of declaring some handlers here. So we have a login function that grabs values from the login form and then makes a post to that login route that we were looking at. Right now it does very little. And in fact, this function does very little. It just makes a post and then logs the response. So we're going to need to do some more work there. And the same with sign up, grabbing values from forms, making a post to the sign up route, and then we'll need to do something to handle that here on the front end. So all clear so far? Do you guys have code written for some of these functions?
Yes. Did we decide if we're going to just scrap it and start over that?
If you want to scrap it and start over, we can do that.
Otherwise, I think I'm just going to do this.
Cool. All right, sounds good. You could also make another fork of the repo and clone it somewhere else, potentially. Okay, great. Let's get going. So if we take a look, well, first of all, let's take a look at the tasks from the README. This is going to kind of guide us through what we want to do. And I think Berto has identified which of these tasks need to be handled on the server and which on the client. So yeah, indeed. So signup process. So when someone fills out that form and sends some data to our backend, to our /signup route, the first thing we need to do is we need to validate that the email that they're sending along, which is coming from that form, right? We need to validate it and make sure that it's a unique email. So we need to check with our database. So let's go back over to our auth route here. Again, we've got very little going on right now. So given that we're going to have to be doing something to verify the email, that probably indicates that we're going to need to be doing something with the database, right? So what's the first thing we need to do in this file if we're going to interact with our database? Any ideas? What?
Require it.
Require it, right. We need to require in our connection to the actual database, which is happening here in our connection.js file in the DB folder. So if we go back to auth.js, let's do var connects equals require, and then in quotes, /db/connection. And we can leave the .js off because it just assumes that it's a JS file if we don't have one on there. Can you all see well enough? Should I make it a little bigger? Couldn't hurt. Great. So we're going to need to query the database. So instead of just sending back JSON that the login was successful, let's comment that out right now. And if we take a quick look at the app.js file, we have this submit function. Oh, have I commented out more than I should have? Let me take a quick look over here. I think I may have commented out more than was needed. Let's open this back up and get kind of this vanilla reset code going here. So if we go to public and to our scripts, to this app.js file, yeah, so we do have a login function and a signup function. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these and bring them into my application so that we have kind of the same skeleton to work with as you do. All right. So we have this login function. It gets triggered when the form login button is hit. We're preventing the default action. We're grabbing the username, the password from the form. Actually, we want to work with signup, so we'll leave login for now. Same idea though. We're grabbing username, password, and email in this case. So we will have access to email. We're storing them all in a data variable, and this is simply an object that contains the username, the email, and the password. And we're making a post to that sign up route, and right now doing very little in terms of handling the data when it comes back. But the data is going to be sent. So if someone fills out the form, username, email, and password will all go to the back end. So if we go back to our auth routes, how can we handle in this sign up route, how can we get access to the email? Since our first task is that we want to verify the email. Where are we? Here we go. Our first task is that we want to validate or ensure that the email is unique. So we need to access the email first and foremost, right? How can we do that? How can we do that here in the route? Any ideas?
Are you doing the sign up or the login?
We're going to do sign up first.
Rec.params?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's not going to be params in this case, but it is going to be part of the request. It's going to be rec.body. Since this is a post route, we take a look here. We're making a post to this URL, and then we're passing this data object. So then this is the body of the post. So we'll have access to the email in rec.body, or at least we should. So if we go over here, we can do, let's declare a variable. Let's do let email equals rec.body.email. This should give us access to it, and let's just go ahead and log that. And right now, all this route is going to do is grab the email and log it. Let's make sure we're actually grabbing it properly. So I believe I have the server running already. If you don't, navigate to your Galvanize Secrets folder, and you can run nodemon or npm start should work as well. Great, I've got nodemon running. If I go back over, I have Galvanize Secrets running. I'm on the sign up page. Well, back to login, but I'm on the sign up page now. I'm going to do matt@matt.com. Oh, that's supposed to be username. We'll just do username Matt, email matt@matt.com, and password, let's just do Matt. We'll keep it real simple. So if I submit this form, probably not a whole lot is going to happen on the front end. That's okay. That's just the favicon that we're getting an error for, so we can ignore that.
Does everybody have the I only have email.
For sign up, make sure you're clicked over to the sign up tab.
Okay.
Yeah, because login only has email and password. So since that console log was on our server side, we need to check our nodemon, or we need to check our terminal to actually see the console log. Indeed, it is working. So we're passing data through the body of the post to the route, and we're capturing it properly with our email variable, and we're logging it out. So we're getting matt@matt.com. It's just what we would expect. So far, so good. Now we need to make a query to the database, right? That's why we've brought connects in here, because we're going to need to access the database to check to see if the email is already in there. So let's start off that query. We can get rid of our console log. For right now, I'm going to write these queries inline. If you wanted to, you could refactor and make it more modular. But for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of it all being right in front of us, we're just going to write them right here in the route. Actually, nope, there isn't already. I'm checking the queries file. I was wondering if there's already a query to get by email, but there's not. So no worries. Let's get back to our route. So now that we have the email, let's query the database. We want to connect, I think it's users. Let's check yeah, it's users. Okay, so connects users where, and implicit in this statement is a select star statement. So you can include that or not. It's totally up to you. I prefer to leave it off. Yeah, Maria.
Do you put return before connects or no?
So because we're doing it right in the route, we don't need to include return. If you were breaking your query out into a separate, like a queries file, that's when you need to use return, because that's like, it's passing that query to the function where you call it. In this case, we don't need return because we're executing the query right here. Yeah. Yeah, I've had confusion. Yeah, so if you see in the queries file, we have return here. It would still work, I think, if we did return in front of it, but it's not technically necessary when you're doing the query right in the route. But if you're splitting them into a separate file and you know, for modularity, you do need to include the return. Yep, good question. All right. So I'm gonna, actually maybe I'll just leave the select statement. So we want to check where the email field, and let's make sure, let's check our migration and make sure that's what it's actually called. Table's called users, fields are email username and password, good. So connects users, select, give us back everything where the email field matches the email that we have stored in this variable. That honestly should do it for right now. We will need a dot then. What should come back is a single user. I'm going to use ES6 syntax for this, fat arrow syntax. Let me know if it's not clear. But once we've queried the database, what comes back should be a user. Even if they're not found in the database, something's going to come back. If they're not found, it's going to be an empty array. If they are found, it'll be the user's data since we have this select star. So right now, let's go slow, and let's just console log the user. And let's see if our query is working here. So make sure the server's still running. Looks like that's good. Now if we go back over here, let's just enter the same information because we didn't actually enter anything into the database yet. And if we submit it, check back over here, we are getting a console log. So we're getting an empty array. Now this query is always going to return an array. As I mentioned, if there is a user in the database, if the user is already in the database, I should say, we'll get that user's information. If they're not, we're just going to get an empty array. But even though it's just one object of data, it is stored in an array. So I just want to point that out. Let's make sure it's working by passing in one of the seeded users. So I think one of the seeded users was Matt Winzer at galvanize.com. Of course, that's the email. Pass that there. Really, that's the only thing we care about right now, because that's the only thing we're using. So if we submit it and we go back and check our logs, yes, I was found in the database, and expectedly we're getting my ID, my email, and my username. So great, our query is working. But rather than just logging the user, what we want to do now is we want to see if this user already existed. Because if they did already exist, we want to tell whoever's trying to sign up that they can't sign up with this email because it's already in the database, this email's taken. So we don't want duplicate users in our database. So rather than just doing our console log, let's use some conditional logic to control for that. So what we can do, we can use an if statement. And since user is going to be in an array, if that array has a length of 1, that means the user was found. If the array has a length of 0, then we can execute. Then we can like go ahead and insert them into the database, and complete that sign up process. So what I'm actually going to check for here is if the user dot length, if user dot length equals 0, insert into database. Else, so if the user is already there, we want to send back some information to indicate that we can't insert you into the database because you already exist. So in this else part, I'm going to control for already finding the user first, and then we'll deal with our query to insert into the database. So else, so essentially if the user is already there, let's just send back some JSON. We'll send back an error, a string that says email already exists in database. Please enter unique email. So if we go back here, since I am trying to log in essentially, what's going on here? Let me refresh the page. Copy this, we're going to use that. Great. So now, if we try and match, if we try and sign up with an email that's already there, we get this error back. So if we were to make this a fully fledged app, we could use this error message, use this JSON, maybe display it below the sign up page, say, you need to enter a unique email to get into this database, you're already there. Right now, we're not going to worry about that, but I just want to point out that if you were making this fully featured, that's why you send some JSON back. Okay, great. So we've controlled for the possibility that they're already in the database. Now we want to do something if they aren't. So essentially, we're going to make an insert statement. It's going to be pretty similar query as this. I'm going to write it in line, and then I might break it out into a separate, I might make it a little modular. Now, we've talked a lot about like security with databases and passwords in particular. So what's one thing we're going to need to bring in now, just like we kind of brought connects in, to make sure that our database is secure, or at least if it does get hacked, that people aren't stealing our users' passwords. There's a security thing that we're going to have to use. Any ideas? Bcrypt. Yeah, exactly. I think I already have that installed. I'm going to check my package JSON. You can all check your package JSONs as well. If you don't have Bcrypt installed, just go to your terminal and do an npm install Bcrypt, and that should do the trick. And even though I already have it installed, it shouldn't matter to install it again. Okay, hopefully you don't get any of these. All right. Okay, cool. Are we all on the same page right now? If you are coding along, do you feel good about what you got? Yeah? Okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this actually up here. We don't need that. So if the user isn't already there, we want to insert them. So connects. Oh, wait. Let's bring in Bcrypt actually before we do this. So just under connects, we'll do var Bcrypt equals require, and then in quotes, Bcrypt. Sweet. So we should now have access to Bcrypt here in this file. Make a little space there, or less space. So if the user doesn't exist, again, we want to query the users table, and we want to do an insert. And we actually want to insert more than just the email, right? So let's declare some more variables to capture. Actually, you know what? We really just want to insert the whole body of the request, right? Because the request has the email, but it also has the password and the username. So assuming that our users have filled out the whole form, rec.body should essentially be everything we want to insert. But we want to replace the default password, not the default, but the one that was passed in the body with a hashed password. So before we insert, let's declare a variable called hash and set this equal to the hashed password. Now, I don't remember this by heart. I think I know it, but let's just be developers and look things up as we go. So if we go to Bcrypt npm, it should have some syntax in here that will show us exactly what we need to do to insert a hashed password. Let's see. It's going to be something with hash sync. So hash this password synchronously. Great. Here we go. To hash a password, can you all see that? Var hash equals bcrypt.hashsync, the password, and then salt. So like salt rounds. We're just going to pass like a certain number of salt rounds because we don't need to make this more complex than that. So awesome. Let's do let hash equals bcrypt.hashsync. And then in here, we want to pass, actually, I'm going to store this in a variable. Let's do let password equals rec.body.password. You don't have to do this. I just like to declare these kinds of variables up top because I think it makes my queries easier to read. So let hash equals bcrypt.hashsync password as the first argument. And the second argument is the number of salt rounds. I'm going to do 10. You can do 8. Probably don't go below 8. I do 10. I don't know why. Because why not? So now we have this hash. We have this hash password. Before we insert into the entire table, let's replace the current password with the hash. So we can do rec.body.password equals hash. So this will override the password that was stored there, replace it with our newly hashed password. And you know what? Let's go ahead and just log the hash. Before we even do this, let's make sure that we're doing what we want to. And let's also log rec.body. Because after we replace password with the hash, we should get like the full object that we want to insert into the database. And so this doesn't break. I'm going to comment out this query that we'd started. So essentially, what we should see is on our server. Sorry, over here on our server. I'll clear this out. If we try and enter, let's do Matt Winzer. Password Matt Winzer, and let's change this back to like matt@matt.com. So if we try to submit this, we're not getting an error on the front end. This one's previous because this is a unique user, so it's not spitting back that error about user already exists in the database. And if we go over to our server, we indeed see that our log of the hash password right there, and then the full body that we now want to insert. We have the username, the email, and the password has now properly been hashed. So, excellent, we're on track. Everyone got that right now? Does that make sense?
What's the 10 again?
Oh, the 10 is the number of times that this encryption algorithm runs to like garble up the password. So the fewer things you specify here, and you know what? To make it super, super clear, let salt rounds equal 10, or maybe just let salt. Salt rounds. See, it's more descriptive. These are what Berto sometimes calls magic numbers. And in general, unless you're trying to make your code as lean and minified as possible, it's not good to have magic numbers because of, someone's looking at your code. Well, what does this 10 really mean? If we specify that it's salt rounds, then we can just pass salt rounds here instead of the number 10. So good question. But it's all working right, so we're essentially in business. And we're essentially, now we're ready to actually insert this new user into our database. So let's write another query. We'll uncomment this. We want to access the user table. We want to insert rec.body. We'll chain a returning statement on returning star. And what this is specifying is that after this new user is inserted, return all of the data about them. So return the whole object of this new user. And now we can chain our .then. So once this user has been inserted and their data has come back, we can now add our .then because the promise has been fulfilled. So .then, this will be a function of, let's call it new user. Do that arrow. So this is the one argument that's coming back. This new user is what's been returned from the database. So it should essentially be the exact same thing as rec.body, but it'll have an ID in the database. Because right now in our log, we just have username, email, and password. Once they actually get inserted into the database, they'll have an ID as well. So connects users, insert rec.body, returning star, then new user. Let's just log that new user. Make sure that this is working properly. Do I have any other console logs? No, it doesn't look like it. All right, sweet. We're in business right now. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. New user, unique email, password. Let's submit it. And let's take a look back here. Excellent. So we've got an array of 1 object that has come back. It has an ID, third user in the database, has my email, password as a hash, and username. So we've done what we wanted to do. Excellent. So again, I want to point out that it would be ideal to abstract this into a function. Do you guys want to do that right now together, or should we just leave the query as it is? What do y'all think? Okay, let's just leave it. I think it is kind of a little easier to follow exactly what's going on with the queries altogether. Sweet. So, yeah, exactly. So you know, just as a quick example, you could do something like function insert user pull this query out. Well, you wouldn't pull the whole query. You would just pull this part. You would need to use the return here since this is in a separate spot. And this would need to take in at least one argument, which would be body, let's say, or user. And then instead of inserting rec.body, you would insert user. You would call the function here, and you would pass it rec.body. So it's the same exact idea. And then you would just chain the .then after insert user, like this. But yeah, for the sake of having it all right in front of us, let's not do that right now. Cool. Great. So we're successfully creating new users in the database. We've made a lot of progress, but now we're getting to the point where web tokens come in. So what we want to do when we actually set the user or create the user, we don't just want to like console log the user in the response. We want to send something back to the front end that allows us to create this session that you keep hearing about. So we want to create a token, and specifically a Json Web Token. So similarly to how we've brought in connects to use our queries, we've brought in Bcrypt to hash passwords, we're going to need to bring in the Json Web Token package to be able to use that properly. So let's do var jwt. And actually, I'm going to separate these and just make a note here. Additional connections and modules. So we'll do var jwt equals require, and then in quotes, Json Web Token, and that's all spelled out. I do already have this installed in my package JSON. If you don't have it, go ahead and go to your terminal, go to this project, and do an npm install Json Web Token. Shouldn't take very long. And in the meantime, while that's installing, let's take a look at the JSON Web Token package, so we can take, kind of investigate how exactly we want to create this token. Work-life balance. Thanks.
Oh, it's only 4:30. Keep working.
Still on the clock. Sweet. Yes, you do. The actual package itself is fully spelled out JSON Web Token. And once you have it installed, you should see it in your package.json file. Does everyone have it installed? Sweet. Did you get it, Logan? Okay. Let me. I'm gonna keep going, and if it doesn't, if it errors or anything, let me know. All right. Sweet. So this JSON Web Token thing. Let's do JSON Web Token Npm. Because we're specifically using the JSON Web Token Npm package. Now there is this awesome jwt.io website that lets you like paste in tokens and see what they come out as, and we may use this, but we're mostly interested in how this particular Npm package functions right now. So we've got it installed, and this, so under usage here, this is essentially what we're going to use to create the token. It takes a lot of potential arguments here. We don't need to worry too much about that. The two things we're going to worry about now are payload and secret or private key. These are just naming conventions that they have right here. Payload is going to be the actual data of the user. So in our auth route, after we insert the user, what comes back is all the data about that new user. So we have access to that object, right? We checked our logs. We have access to this object. Right now it's in an array, but that's okay. No big deal. So let's take another look at how web tokens are used. We're going to use this jwt.sign method. Payload could be an object, literal, buffer, or string. So right off the bat, let's create another variable called payload. Let payload equal new user at index 0. The reason why we need to specify at index 0 is that the web token itself, or the JWT function that we're going to be using, this jwt.sign method in particular, payload needs to be an object literal or a string, but it can't be an object. So that's going to screw things up if we pass it it can't be an array. I don't know if I said it can't be an object. It needs to be an object. It can't be an array.
So it comes back like an array of 1.
Yes, exactly. And that's just how Connects works. Yep. Nothing like fancy going on there. That's just like what Connects sends data back as. Even if there's only one entry in the database that we're grabbing data from, it's still going to send it back as an array. And so let's go ahead and change this console log to log payload instead of just new user. Actually, I think it's pretty clear, right? We see here that this is an array. As much as I love to check every step of the way, let's just move on. So this is an array of one object. Since we're specifying index 0, it's going to be just the single object. So let's just get right into the actual web token usage. So do we required? Yeah, so we have JWT required in. So now we can use that jwt.sign method. So jwt.sign, let's pass the payload. And now the next thing that we want to use with the web token is this secret or private key thing. We've talked about like environment variables and security. This is one of the instances where we're going to want to use an env file. So, and the reason why is that these web tokens, you can use this website to just pass in any web token, but I'm going to make this a little bigger. And then it'll show you what the payload was, so what the object that you passed to have encoded was. It has these headers, which we can basically not worry about for right now. And then it has this verify signature thing. And what you pass in here is something, a string, that gets sort of like cross-referenced with the token to verify if it was legitimately issued by your server. we don't want to put this little secret, and again, this could be anything, my secret. All right, so you see if we change it, then we get this invalid signature thing. Because anybody can decode a token. There's nothing special about, the token isn't encrypted, it's just encoded. So it's just translated from this object form into this weird string form. It's not actually encrypted. Unlike our passwords, they're not being hashed. You're not really making it so that you can't pull data out of it. So what allows us to verify that this token has been issued by our particular server is the secret here. The default secret that they're using for this example is secret. So that's why I changed it to my secret. We get this invalid signature stuff. So rather than pass, a string right here of my secret, which we could do and it would absolutely work, what we actually want to do for the sake of security is we want to store this secret in an env file. So what's the first thing, or what are two things that we need to do to actually hide this secret in an env file? Any ideas?
We need to require .env.
Exactly, we need to require .env. Excellent. So up here with our additional connections and modules, let's go ahead and do that. Let's do var. Actually, this one isn't a var declaration. This is simply a require statement. So for the .env module, you require .env spelled out, and then do .config and invoke that. .config is a method of the module. It's a little different than storing things in variables, but we're not calling .env directly. We're going to use that process.env notation. So if you look at my package JSON, I also have .env. If you don't have it, go over to your terminal and do an npm install .env, and make sure you spell it out fully. If you put an actual period env, it's not going to work because the name of the actual npm package is .env. Sweet. Does everybody have that installed? Wonderful. All right, great. So now we have that package. We're requiring it in. And actually, the next thing we need to do is we need to touch a .env file. So if you go over to your terminal, you do touch.env. And if you go back over to your application, you should have a .env file in the root directory. I already have one. I have this token secret. Mine is with like 5 H's. I think that's the default one from the example that they provide on Json Web Tokens. Yeah. So you see, like, I just took that straight from the example. If you were making this application for real, you probably would want to use something different for your token secret. But it doesn't really matter what you use. It just should be hidden in the env file. That's kind of the key thing. As long as you hide it, you're in business.
So it takes this token secret and puts it into that like encrypted thing?
Yes, exactly. Like somewhere buried in that weird encoded web token is information about the signature that it's verified with, or the secret that it's verified with. I don't know enough about how these are parsed to tell you where, but it's this last blue part. Something in there indicates that it's a base64 URL encoded thing, and that the secret is whatever the secret is. Yeah, good question. Whoops. All right, sweet. So if you don't have a token secret, and again, you could call this anything. I just want it to be very clear what it is, so I named it all capitals token_secret. Go ahead and create this in your .env file if you don't already have one, and just make some kind of secret. It does not have to be shh. It could be secret, my secret. It could be whatever you want. It could just be a gibberish string. Just make something. And then if we go back to our route, we have .env required, and we can go down here to our jwt.sign function, and instead of passing an actual string in here, we use process.env, which this now gives us access to the environment variable file, the .env file, dot whatever you named your token. I called mine token secret. If you called it that, just do that. If you called it something else, invoke that here. So Now we don't want to just run jwt.sign. We actually want to store the result in a variable, because then we can pass that variable or send that variable back from our server to our front end. This is what's going to allow us to set the session on the front end. So kind of the overall process is, let's see if the user exists. If they already exist, just spit out an error. If they don't exist, they're allowed to sign up. So we insert them into the database after hashing the password. Then, this is simply checking to see if they're in the database. Then if they're not, we can insert them. And once we have inserted them properly, we want to create a token with their specific information. And we want to send that token back to the front end so we can use it to create a session. So let's store this jwt.sign information in a variable. We'll do let token equals jwt.sign payload.process.env.token secret. Now, can anyone think of something that I'm missing right now that might be an issue in terms of encoding, in terms of what we're putting into the token? Something that might be a security issue in particular. Any thoughts? It's okay if you don't have any. Okay, so the key thing that we're missing right now is that even though we've hashed the password, we're still sending that all the way back. And even though it's hashed and it's encrypted and it should be pretty secure, why do we need to send that back to the front end? There's no real reason. So before we create our token, let's remove the password from our payload, right? So we can do payload actually, let's just delete it. Delete payload dot password. Because there's just no good reason to send that hash password over to the front end. Yeah.
Why is it called payload? Like, I know it's a variable, but like, what is
Like, why is that the convention?
Yeah.
It's just a convention. It could be, we could call it data, we could call it user. I mean, it might be clearer to call it user actually. But like just the way, kind of the convention of the way web tokens do it, it's a data payload. So that's where payload comes from. It's basically just a bunch of data that we're sending all at once. So purely a convention. Feel free to call it something different if you want. And you know what? Before we do this, actually, you know what? It should be fine. If this works properly, we should be able to pump the token into the jwt.io right here. And, whoops, no, I screwed that up. If this worked properly, we should be able to just paste it in here and see that there's no password in it. So if we made a mistake, we'll find out. Now I mentioned that the next step is once we've created the tokens, we actually want to send it back to the front end. So similar to how we're sending an error, now on success, let's send the actual token. So we'll do res.json. And actually, I'm going to make a little space here between my variables just for readability. We'll leave that there. Let's do res.json. We'll send back an object where the token is this token. And with ES6 syntax, if you're declaring an object where the key and the value are the same, you can actually leave the value off. So this is the same as token. So actually, maybe for clarity, I'll leave it like that. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, sweet. So we're sending this back as JSON, assuming everything goes well. So on the front end, we should be able to see our token. It'll be fully encoded, but if it worked right, we'll be able to paste it into jwt.io and see the data. So you see, it's just convention. They're calling it payload. It's just data. It's just an object in this case. Nothing fancy going on. All right, sweet. So let's go back to our application. I'm going to close this down. Now, this username already exists now. I think what I'm going to do is actually just run the seeds again, because that'll zero out the new user I just created. So you can do this if you want. Don't have to. I'm just going to run the seeds again. Start from scratch, or start fresh. And let's try submitting this, see what happens. Wonderful. Let's zoom that in a little bit so we can see. Oh boy, that's way too much. So, it works, right? We get a token back. So this is actually coming from our backend to our front end. We have an anonymous object that's coming back. It has a key of token and a value of a JSON Web Token. So let's go ahead and copy that. Yeah, question.
Is your nodemon for your server console like throwing any errors? Because mine
Is,
yes.
I'm not getting any errors. What kind of error are you getting?
Cannot read property token secret
It must be something to do with how you're declaring or how you're using the process.env token secret. In your .env file, do you have token secret that's set to something?
like capitalized or whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's probably it. Is that it? Wonderful. No worries. No problem at all. That's why I wanted to code along. I want everyone getting their app working if they're doing the code along. So let's go ahead and copy. Why are you doing this to me? Let's go ahead and copy this token. And if we paste it now into JWT, wonderful. Oh, I'm not getting any data in there? Okay, I think I need to actually open this up to get the full token. Yeah, that's why. Okay, so we'll grab the full token, and this is just to make sure that we're sending back what we expected and what we wanted to. Now if we paste that in, beautiful. We have our headers. It's a JSON Web Token. It's using this HS256 algorithm. That's what this stands for, to encode it. And our payload, we have ID, we have email, we have username, all useful stuff. We don't have password. Really important overall. Even though it's hashed, we're never going to use that hashed password on the front end, so just don't send it. Don't open your application up to more security vulnerabilities than you need to. So right now, though, we do see we have an invalid signature. So the way we can verify the signature is we need to pass in the same secret that I used in my token secret. So I'm just going to copy that. And now if we paste that in under verify signature, boom, wonderful. We see our signature is verified. There is a function that JWT uses that we'll use later to verify that the token that our user is sending potentially to the backend is what we've actually issued to them. So that's what the verify is. We want to make sure that if someone requests information from our database, that they haven't created their own token or that they haven't stolen someone else's token, because they essentially, mostly that they haven't created their own and tried to fake credentials, because without knowing exactly what our token secret is, their token won't verify, essentially. And there is a verify function here, jwt.verify, and you pass in the token and you pass in your secret. So if you have that stored in an env, nobody else has access to that. Even if your code is completely open source on GitHub, your .env file should be in your gitignore, and thus it won't get pushed to GitHub. Actually, yeah. Oh, node modules. Let's go ahead, since I just mentioned it, let's go ahead and add that .env file to your gitignore. I think this project came with a gitignore file. So just add .env there, because if you push your .env file up, then you're kind of undoing all the work that you did to hide it in the first place. All right, sweet. So it's working. Good stuff. So this is kind of the heavy lifting for the sign up right now. Like, we've taken in the user, we've created an entry in the database with all their information, we've got it back with an ID, we've created our web token, we've deleted the password from it, and we're sending it all the way back to the front end. So the next thing we really want to do is we need to handle this on the front end, right? Right now, in our app.js file, if you go to app.js rather than auth.js, right now all we're really doing when we get a response is we're logging the response. Now, to actually create a session, what we want to do is we want to store this token information somewhere, right? We want to store it so that we have access to it. So the way we're going to handle that is we're going to store it in local storage. All right. So again, you could abstract this and like make a make a function, which is kind of how I approached this previously. But let's just write it in line so that it's like clear and it's just organized right there. We'll keep the console log for now because I like seeing that we made the token properly. But what we can do now, let's make sure that the response isn't coming back as an error, because if it's coming back as an error, we don't want to like put the error into local storage, right? We just want to put the token in. So if response.error, and this just lines up with that else here. So if the response comes back with an error key, let's do an alert of the error. So let's see if that works right now. We go back to our application. We have already like signed up with this user. Wait, did I do that in the login? Yeah, I did that in login, my bad. Go ahead and cut that right out. And let's put it in the actual sign up. So if response.error, alert response.error. Let's see if that works. Refresh. Sign up. Sure. I think the username was Matt Winzer. Email, was it matt@matt.com? Something like that. Password Matt Winzer. I think that's what it was. We are getting the error. Why are we not alerting it though? Well, we are logging the response. Let's make sure. Does it? I wonder what's going on. Let's try this again. That has been happening a lot lately. Let's just restart it. Well, if it's popping up for you, then something is working right. Then that's great. So sign up, make the post with the data, then the response comes, log the response. Let's try this again. Do a hard refresh. So if we sign up, I think it was just Matt Winzer, Matt@Matt.com. Why? Where is this log coming from?
Your URL, some like password equals no key.
Yeah, I think that's, well, you know what? Let's just check the database. What are we missing here? Go back to this auth route. I mean, it is sending back the error. Email already exists in database. How about if we change this console log to, what I'm confused about is I'm not seeing error in front of this log. App.js, line 86. Wait, that can't be right. Oh, I have another function down here that's overriding it. I don't know why that's there. Somehow when I was commenting out code to like make sure I didn't have my finished solution here, I was overriding that entire function. So let's try it again real quick. Do a refresh. Whoops, sign up. Am I saved in here anywhere? Boom. All right, there we go. Yeah, fun fact, if you, kind of like CSS, if you have another function declaration below, it's going to override. All right, sweet. So that's working. So if there's an error, let's just log it. I'm going to get rid of this here. Or sorry, let's alert the user. Now, not the best user experience, but you can, imagine a use case where you just display this error nicely on the page rather than an alert. But for now, let's not worry about that. So else, what do we want to do? We want to set this token in local storage so we have access to it. So if there's an error, alert the error. Else, if it succeeds, what's going to come back, we'll have response.token, right? Because that's what we specified in our auth route. And the token will be token. So else, does anyone know the syntax to set something in local storage?
Local storage
Dot set item. And then the first thing that you pass to this method is kind of, so the way local storage works is it stores strings. You can't store like full objects or arrays. You can store them if they're in string format. So whatever you store just has to be like wrapped in a string. So we'll do local storage.set item, and now this first argument is the key of the for local storage. So local storage works in key value pairs, but the value just has to be a string. That's just how it works. So we'll do set item, let's call it token, and then the next argument that it's going to take is the actual token itself. I believe the token is in string format already. If it's not, we can do like a json.stringify, but let's just try it without stringifying it first. So set item token, and then we'll pass response.token. And this should do the trick. So again, I'm just gonna like run my seeds again to like zero out my database, make it so that I can log in with this new user. Let's see if it works. Wait, where's that error log coming from? Well, let's see if it worked. If you in your Chrome Dev Tools, if you go to Application, oh boy, I've got a lot of stuff in here. This is from me working on some other stuff. Let me clear all this out. Clear all. Okay, and let's try it again. Run the seeds again. Do a hard refresh to make sure. We'll do the sign up. My info's already there. Boom, the token has appeared. We have been successful. So like it's really, really easy to use local storage, and it's super useful. Oh, that's the server. So yeah, in our app.js here, yeah, it's as simple as local storage.set item. You can also, if you want to get items out of local storage, you just do local storage.get item, and you pass the key of the item that you want to retrieve. So this is setting and getting with local storage. So this essentially creates our session for us. And this sort of like concludes the first part of signing up. Now, we also want to redirect our user, right? So once they've signed up, we create the session for them, we have their token available, and we want to like redirect them to the secrets page. Right now, it's not going to like display much of anything, right? Because we haven't implemented the logic to show the secrets, which we'll do next week. But let's make it so that when you click this button, you don't just you don't just go nowhere, right? We want to actually move through the flow of the app. So local storage.set item token, and then let's redirect. So we can redirect with a location.href, I believe. So location is a essentially like a global variable that's available on the front end. It's like kind of like if you've seen window, you might see window.location. Location.href should work fine for our purposes. And what we'll do is we'll redirect to the secrets page, which is, I believe, just since we're already in index here, it'll be to /secrets.html. So let's give that a shot. Location.href /secrets.html. Sweet. Let's see if it works. Again, I'm just going to reseed so I don't have to deal with making new users every time here. Let's see if it works. Oh, we actually probably already have a token. So let's clear that out of memory. Clear that out of local storage. We'll clear that. Do a quick refresh. Go back to sign up. Nice, my information's still there. Submit it. Oh, wait. Did I not just reseed? I'm just going to restart NodeMon because sometimes my NodeMon acts up. Try this again.
I think you check to make sure the token is in local storage.
Oh, really? Okay, so I should just reseed again, probably. All right, cool. Do a hard refresh. Nothing in local storage. Do our sign up. Nice. Our token has appeared. Does not look like we've been redirected anywhere, though.
I got a console log error saying that location.href is not a function.
Okay, I must be doing that wrong. Let's see if we can look that up real quick. Location.href. I thought that's what it was. Location href property, window.location. Let's take a look at the MDN docs real quick. Location.reload, location equals. Is there not a .href? Huh, it's only right there. Well, it looks like we could probably do it with location equals something or location.assign. So why don't we give that a shot? Location.replace. Looks like there's a few ways to accomplish what we want to do.
I thought I saw that they had like location.href equals something.
Oh, I think you're right.
Instead of like a
Yeah, so that would make sense that it's not a function. So yeah, let's do location.href. I'm pretty sure you're right. Thank you, Maria. Equals. Let's see if just /secrets works. We may have to specify like the whole URL. And we do have URL up here. So let's just see if it works. Again, I'm just, you know what? Maybe I will just make a new, I'll run the seeds.
It works.
Does it work? Awesome, with just /secrets? Beautiful. All right, let me just get it working on mine. I'm gonna clear out this token, do my sign up again, submit. Token's been set, and we're redirected to secrets. Yay! Awesome. It's 5 o'clock, so let's cut off for now. On Monday, we'll pick up with login. We've done so much heavy lifting with sign up. It's going to be pretty easy to translate that to login, and then we'll get into authorization as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.